ياسين.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أتمان الأكملان خير خلق الله أجمعين، نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Today we'll be covering, inshallah, verses 45 right the way down to 54. We'll start, inshallah, with the recitation. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون وما تأتيهم من آية من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين. وإذا قيل لهم أنفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا أنطعم من لو يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين. ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين. ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون. ونفخ في الصور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون. قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون. إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون. فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Okay, to begin with, first, wanted to make one correction. If you go to verse 6, those of you that have the notes, one correction. Allah said, لِتُنذِرَ قَوْمًا مَا أُنذِرُوا آبَاؤُهُمْ. Here we mentioned the different opinions. We said that Allah said, we gave you this Quran in order that you may مَا أُنذِرُوا, warn them as their forefathers were warned, or because their forefathers weren't warned. If we adopted the first opinion, which is ma is mawsula, meaning warn them as their forefathers were warned, it means that, as Baqā'ī mentioned in his tafsīr, Allah is telling them, Prophet ﷺ warned them just like their ancestors were warned who heard of the call of Ibrahim alayhi salam. Yeah? And then from Ibrahim, his immediate offspring came from him was Adnan. Adnan was known to be one of the ancestors of the Arabs, the Adnaniyun. Okay, the mistake on my part was that I said Adnan was the prophet here that we were that it was referring to. No, it's Ibrahim alayhi salam. Adnan was his grandchild. Okay, the second thing was a clarification. Verse number 41, which we took last week. وَآيَةٌ لَهُمْ أَنَّا حَمَلْنَا ذُرِّيَّتَهُمْ فِي الْفُلْكِ الْمَشْحُونِ. We mentioned two different views here, but I wanted to clarify. Sa'di mentioned it in a very nice summarized way. He said, وَآيَةٌ لَهُمْ, and another ayah for the Quraysh is that أَنَّا حَمَلْنَا, we carried who? ذُرِّيَّتَهُمْ, we carried their dhurriya. He said there's two views basically here. The first is that dhurriya refers to aba'uhum. Dhurriya, the offspring, means we carried their fathers, forefathers, going back to Nuh alayhi salam on that ship. The second view is that he carried jins, meaning human race. Human race. Dhurriyatahum means he carried the human race. Because when Allah saved Nuh and the believers on that day when the flood came, in essence all of mankind was saved. The human race was saved because Allah carried them on that day on the ship. Okay. Now let's begin today's tafsir. Allah said, وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمُ اتَّقُوا مَا بَيْنَ أَيْدِيكُمْ وَمَا خَلْفَكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تُرْحَمُونَ. Up until now, Allah has related many ayat to the Quraysh. Many ayat. We said there were ayat makaniya, regarding place. Allah said, وَآيَةٌ لَهُمُ الْأَرْضُ الْمَيْتَةَ. The makan in this case was the barren earth. Think about the barren earth, how we brought it to life with pastures, with growth, with the fruits, etc., etc. Then Allah mentioned ayat of another category, of zaman, of time. لَا الشَّمْسُ يَنْبَغِي لَهَا أَن تُدْرِكَ الْقَمَرَ وَلَا اللَّيْلُ سَابِقُ النَّهَارِ. Regarding the night, the day, the sun and the moon, how they all come together to produce this phenomena of time. This is another category of signs. Then Allah moved to another category of sign, which is the ayat of the ocean, Bahriya. How Allah said that, look, we created this ocean, how vast it is, and then we taught you how to build a ship so you could use it for transport. And then after that, ayat Barriya as well, of the land, because Allah said, not only we create the ship for you, we also made مِن مِثْلِهِ مَا يَرْكَبُونَ, other things that you ride, which are things that you ride on the earth, meaning the land. So different categories of ayat, but all of these ayat are signs of the dunya, signs relating to this world. In this verse now, Allah moves now from this world and to the hereafter, signs related to the life to come. When they are told, وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمُ اتَّقُوا مَا بَيْنَ أَيْدِيكُمْ, when they are told, have taqwa of that which is before you. The word ittaqu, it comes from the word waqa, yaqi, wiqaya. Linguistically, this word means to be cautious, to preserve, to shield, to be wary. So, when it is said to them, be wary about bayna aydikum, what is before you? Tabari here mentioned two views. The first is that bayna aydikum means be wary of what happened to the past nations. Look at how Allah destroyed them. Be wary of a similar fate. Then he related the opinion of Mujahid. Mujahid said it refers to their sins. O Quraysh, reflect over your life of sins that you have just done. Because of those sins, there is a adhab pending bayna aydikum, before you. Second view. One note about Mujahid. Mujahid was the famous student of which companion? Who was he the famous student of? No one knows? He was the famous student of Ibn Abbas radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma. It is related that Mujahid sat with Ibn Abbas and read the entire Quran to him, ayah after ayah. And he said, I stopped at every single verse and asked Ibn Abbas, what does this mean? Meaning, what is the tafsir of this? That is why Thawri and Imam Shafi'i, as well as Imam Ahmad, would always seek to go back to the narration of Mujahid. They would always try to find, what did Mujahid say about this tafsir? Because we know Mujahid went through the whole of the Quran with Ibn Abbas, and Ibn Abbas radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma must have learnt it from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So they gave great value to these statements of Mujahid in Tafsir. Okay, بَيْنَ أَيْدِيكُمْ has those two views. وَمَا خَلْفَكُمْ. وَمَا خَلْفَكُمْ means then, okay, before we said reflect over the previous nations. Now, وَمَا خَلْفَكُمْ means the punishment, the vengeance of Allah that lays before you in the life to come. Be wary of that, O Quraysh. Now, after saying this, قِيلَ لَهُمْ اتَّقُوا مَا بَيْنَ أَيْدِيكُمْ مَا خَلْفَكُمْ. There should be some mention of what is their response. When they are said this, what did they say? Or how do they behave? How do they react? But that is not there. That is omitted. It is implied. What is implied? That أَعْرَضُوا. When they are said this, they turn away. And that is why the next verse, Allah tells us that وَمَا تَأْتِيهِم مِّنْ آيَةٍ مِّنْ آيَاتِ رَبِّهِمْ إِلَّا كَانُوا عَنْهَا مُعْرِضِينَ. That when they are told that, what they behaved was mentioned in the second verse, meaning that they turned away when they were told, be wary and be cautious. Then Allah said, لَعَلَّكُمْ تُرْحَمُونَ. لَعَلَّكُمْ تُرْحَمُونَ, so that you may be shown mercy. Look how Allah is addressing the Quraysh. Be wary of these things. Be mindful. And as Tabari said, if by taking heed of those things you turn back to me, leave your shirk behind, embrace Islam, come to me with repentance, لَعَلَّكُمْ تُرْحَمُونَ, perhaps you will be shown mercy. To hear that, has an impact on one's heart. Allah is telling these Quraysh how despicable their idol worship was. If you leave that, then there is some hope for you. There is a door for you to come through to me. There is still a way out. Now look here. In the beginning, Allah warned them, or said they were being warned. إِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ اتَّقُوا. Be careful. Warn them. After giving them a warning, then Allah at the end gave them hope. Gave them hope. The coming together of warning and hope makes for a very powerful argument, a powerful means of persuasion. Yeah? We should learn this for our children even, that this way around, first of all, both of these things together, warning and giving hope, two essential elements when you want to persuade someone to do something. And then the order. What should come first? Hope or warning? The sequence here is warning and then hope. I'll give you an example. For example, with my daughter, she's 3 years old. When I have to look after her, in the day, right at the beginning of the day, I tell her that, look, we're going to do a lot of fun things today, but I'm telling you, don't misbehave. Make sure you have your food, and don't be bad to mom, or don't be bad to granddad, grandma. Behave yourself. If you do, we'll go to the park later on. How does that sound? Yeah, let's do that. Okay, so this is a little lesson. That bring those two things together. This is how human beings respond well to the call. And look how Allah is addressing them. And to show them some sign of hope. Allah doesn't even need their worship, yet Allah gave them hope. Turn back to me, لَعَلَّكُمْ تُرْحَمُونَ. Okay. One linguistic point here. The verse began, وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ. It wasn't that somebody said, or he said, Allah said, the Prophet said, the angel said. No. قِيلَ لَهُمْ. It was said. It is majhul. What is the benefit we get from taking cognizance of the fact that Allah began the verse in a passive sense? What we can learn is that by using the majhul, Allah was bringing the attention not on who said this to them, but rather their response. Rather their response, and more to the point, what is being said. It is not really of concern who said this to them. Was it the Prophet? Was it the companions saying it to the Quraysh? No, that's not important. Qeel. It was said. What was said is what is important. Be wary of that which is before you and that which is going to come later on. لَعَلَّكُمْ تُرْحَمُونَ. It's a linguistic fa'idah there. Okay. Now in usul al-fiqh, usul tafsir rather, we learn that tafsir is of many types. Okay. There's 4 main types of tafsir. Number 1 is known as ijmali. Ijmali is a summarized version. Okay. إِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمُ اتَّقُوا مَا بَيْنَ أَيْدِيكُمْ وَمَا خَلْفَكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تُرْحَمُونَ. Ijmali type of tafsir here would be, look, the Quraysh were being told to fear what has come before them, what is coming after them as well, so that in order they may turn back and Allah will forgive them. That is like a summarized version, ijmali. Okay, short, succinct. Tabari, rahimahullah, when he used to do his tafsir, he would bring first a statement summarizing the meaning, and then he would go into details. Okay, this is a very academic approach, that first I'm going to answer the question first in a summarized form and then in a detailed form. Okay, because this can be understood by everyone. People that just want to hear quickly, tell me, and those people that want to know deep insight. The second is known as tahlili. Tahlili is the very technical type. وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ إِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ. قِيل is majhul, passive tense. Okay, what was said to them? They said to them, ittaqu. What does ittaqu mean? It means be wary, be cautious. About what? مَا بَيْنَ أَيْدِيكُمْ. 2 views here. خَلْفَكُمْ. 2 views here. Okay? Then you have another. Then you have this comparative type. Maqaran. Comparative type. Here, the person making tafsir would say, there are 2 views here. What seems to be the more likely, more likely view? What seems to be the stronger view here? For example, in this verse, بَيْنَ أَيْدِيكُمْ could be said to refer to the past nations or to the punishment that awaits them. Likewise, خَلْفَكُمْ could also mean the same as well. But which way round could it more probably be? They said that in the Quran, where Allah mentions things by sequence, usually Allah mentions the greater matter first and the matter of less importance after. Based on that principle, we would say that مَا بَيْنَ أَيْدِيكُمْ refers to the adhab of the akhirah, because that is far greater, more significant. وَمَا خَلْفَكُمْ, and your sins that you've done before, or the destruction of the past nations, is in light of that a lesser matter. Therefore we would go for this opinion from the 2 views. Did you get that? Different type of tafsir. Then you have the 4th type, which is mawdu'i. Mawdu'i is thematic tafsir. A good example of this tafsir is the tafsir of Sayyid Qutb rahimahullah. Thematic. This can be of 2 types. What did Allah say about Ibrahim alayhi salam in terms of his da'wah? So we need to go through all of the verses in the Quran where Allah mentions the da'wah Ibrahim alayhi salam. Then we look at them and analyze them. Thematic. The theme, Ibrahim and his da'wah. Do you get that? Thematic. Or Surah Yaseen. What is the theme of Surah Yaseen? The theme of Surah Yaseen, as said by many, is resurrection. Let us find all of those verses that point towards this theme and analyze them. Thematic tafsir. Okay, so that's the 4th type. Okay, let's move on to the next ayah now. Then Allah said, وَمَا تَأْتِيهِم مِّنْ آيَةٍ مِّنْ آيَاتِ رَبِّهِمْ إِلَّا كَانُوا عَنْهَا مُعْرِضِينَ. وَمَا تَأْتِيهِم مِّنْ آيَةٍ. And an ayah, when it comes to them, see, this was enough to say. When an ayah comes to them, they turn away. But Allah didn't leave it like that. Allah said, وَمَا تَأْتِيهِم مِّنْ آيَةٍ مِّنْ آيَةِ رَبِّهِمْ. That when any ayah comes to them, any ayah whatsoever comes to them, And who are these ayat of? Who are they from? Rabbihim, from their Lord. You see the same reaction. كَانُوا عَنْهَا مُعْرِضِينَ. Then they are of those signs making i'rad. I'rad means to turn away. They just turn away from it, meaning they reject it. Now, Tabari mentioned here that what signs do these refer to? These ayat, which ayat exactly? It could refer to these ayat that have been spoken about the barren earth. It could speak about the sun, the moon. It could speak about the ship sailing on the sea. These ayat. Or it could refer to any ayat whatsoever. Now the thing about an ayah, okay, we translate it as sign. Sign. What is the job of a sign? What is the job of a sign? What is a sign supposed to do? Direct you to something. Yeah? Direct you to something. So, for example, when you're driving and you see the sign for no entry, the red circle, white line across it, that tells you that this is no entry. So Allah referred to His creation, okay, the sun, the moon, the night, all these phenomena as ayat, signs. So what did they point to? They point to the existence of Allah, His oneness, His right to be worshipped, all of these things. Do you get that? That they're not just signs, meaning you look at them and you don't know what's going on. No. Allah is telling us that human beings, not Muslims now, human beings have it within them to recognize from Allah's creation His existence, His tawheed, His oneness. Now if they didn't have that effect on human beings, then Allah wouldn't say the Quraysh rejected them. Allah wouldn't have said إِلَّا كَانُوا عَنْهَا مُعْرِضِينَ. Because how can they reject something they don't understand? How can they reject something they don't recognize as being a sign? And how can somebody, okay, look at this no entry sign and go through and just carry on driving, and then the police stop him and they say, "What, didn't you see the sign?" You go, "The sign doesn't mean nothing to me. I don't understand it." No, we know that you understand it, and that's where we're going to nick you. Okay? The sign is clear. Now if these are the signs of human beings, ayati rabbihim, what about the signs of Allah? Are they not more profound, clear and explicit in pointing towards what they signify, which is Allah Jalla wa Ala, His power over mankind and His right, to be worshipped. Do you get that point? Okay, now look at this linguistically now. وَمَا تَأْتِيهِم مِّنْ آيَةٍ. وَمَا. Here they said lam, la, with a present tense verb, fi'l mudari', wasn't used. Rather, mim, this ma, with the present tense verb, ta'tihim, was used. What significance do we find from that? They said that had la been used, had Allah said wala ta'tihim, it would have given this sense of when an ayah comes to them, then they reject it. But ma, when it is used with the present tense verb, it has this sense of hal, this sense of whenever an ayah from the ayat of their Lord come to them, not if an ayah came to them in the future. Lam with the fi'l mudari' has this connotation of istiqbal, of future tense. That's why in Surah Al-A'raf Allah said, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا بِآيَاتِنَا وَاسْتَكْبَرُوا عَنْهَا لَا تُفَتَّحُ لَهُمْ. لَا تُفَتَّحُ. The doors of the heavens will not be open, meaning when it happens, then it won't be open for them. Future tense. لا تفتح لهم. Here it's not lam, it is ma. وما تأتيهم, which shows us that whenever these signs come to them. Now look here, Allah spoke about signs. He said min ayatim min ayati rabbihim, when one sign from many signs. So this is giving the sense of plenty, abundance, many signs. Then Allah went further to say these are the signs of not just anyone, of Allah. Then Allah referred to Himself as not just Allah but as Rabb. Rabb has more of a close, affectionate meaning than Allah. Rabb is the Murabbi, the one who looks after, nourishes, sustains you. Look at the one who's showing you these ayat is the Rabb, and not just the Rabb, Rabbihim. It is their Rabb, the one who takes care of them, looks after them, sustains them, is showing them so many signs. And what do? إِلَّا كَانُوا عَنْهَا مُعْرِضِينَ. They just reject them, they turn away from them. So this construct shows us the arrogance and the disbelief, the ugly face of kufr inside of the hearts of the Quraysh and anyone like them. The arrogance, man, these signs are so clear, they're from the Rabb, and the Rabb who looks after you, and yet still you reject them. Man, you must be stooped in disbelief, full of arrogance, with pride, in order to behave like this. Now a point in Aqidah. Allah said that they don't disbelieve in those ayat. He said that they reject them. I'rad is a type of kufr, and it is kufr after knowing the truth. Somebody recognized the sign, he knew that there's some truth in this pointing towards Allah, but then he rejected it. Then he said, no, I don't care, I'm going to reject this even though I can see the truth in it. This is i'rad, to reject. It's different to just kufr. And if somebody doesn't know and he goes, I don't want anything to do with Islam, I don't want to hear about it, I don't want to read the Quran, I'm going to disbelieve in it. This is kufr. I'rad is like somebody comes to know a bit about Islam, or he sees the truth in it. Maybe his friend becomes Muslim and he sees him, the way he lives, how he's changed his behavior, and he sees there is some truth in Islam, yet still he says, to hell with it, don't want anything to do with it. This is i'rad. Okay, next verse. وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ أَنْفِقُوا مِمَّا رَزَقَكُمُ اللَّهُ قَالَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَنُطْعِمُ مَنْ لَوْ يَشَاءُ اللَّهُ أَطْعَمَهُ. Okay, and now it is said to them something different. Before, what was said to them related to the akhirah. Now something is being said to them referring to this dunya. What is said to them? أنفقوا, do infaq, spend. Spend mimma razaqakumullah, spend from that which Allah has enriched you with. Yeah, Allah has given you money, wealth. So this is an address to wealthy people. This is something said to wealthy people. When it is said to them, spend from what Allah has enriched you with, listen to their response. قَالَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا, the disbelievers say, لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, to the believers, indicating that it was the believers that were saying this to them. Okay, they said to them, أَنُطْعِمُ مَنْ لَوْ يَشَاءُ. They said to them, okay, you want us to feed these poor people? No, we're not going to feed them. You know why? أَنُطْعِمُ مَنْ لَوْ يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ أَطْعَمَهُ. Should we feed people who are poor, even though Allah could feed them if He so wished? They're poor, you want us to feed them? Allah could feed them if He wanted to. وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. Look at this. Tabari said that when the mushrikun were told to spend from that which Allah had enriched them, meaning give what is due from your wealth to those that are living amongst you, they responded, should we feed from our wealth and our provisions when Allah could do so if He so wished? Qurtubi said that this was said to the Jews, this was said to the Yahud, and this was their response. Others said that this was said to the Quraysh by the Muslims for them to feed the poor Muslims. So the Quraysh are being told, look, they are people, they are still your people. Yes, they are Muslims, but you should feed them. The Quraysh would say, we're not going to feed them until they give up their belief. And plus they would make this excuse as well. Qurtubi mentioned a very nice story. He said that regarding this verse, once Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu ta'ala an was feeding, either feeding or spending, I think spending, was spending upon poor people, okay? So he was giving sadaqah out. Abu Jahl came and he saw him. He said, what are you doing? He said, I'm giving sadaqah. He said, to these poor people? He said, yes, to these poor people. He said, why do you give them sadaqah when Allah could feed them? Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, look at his reply. He said that Allah tested people with wealth just as He tested them or others with poverty. And He commanded those who are poor to observe patience, and those that are rich to give sadaqah to the poor. Allahu Akbar. Look at his response. He said, Allah decreed that for them, and He decreed this for us. But He commanded us to spend on them, and He commanded them to be patient. Okay, there's a few lessons we can learn from this. But before we go into the lessons, look at the end of the ayah. In antum illa fi dhalalin mubin. And then somebody says, indeed you are in but plain error. There are two views that Tabari mentioned. The first view is that it is the Quraysh. Abu Jahl or Quraysh, they are saying to the Muslims, you want us to give charity? You must be crazy. In antum illa fi dhalalin mubin. You are in clear error. Allah wanted to feed them, He would feed them. Another view is that no, Allah is saying to those Quraysh, how dare you say such a thing? In antum illa fi dhalalin mubin. You are the ones in plain error. Okay, let's go back to this argument now of the Quraysh. In Arabic we call this a shubha. It can be translated as a specious argument. You know what a specious argument is? An argument on the face of it seems to have some truth or some, correctness. But when you go deep into it, or when you look behind it, beneath the surface, you find that it's a false argument. It has no backing evidence whatsoever. Therefore it's a specious argument. A specious argument. The Quraysh would use this type of arguing to justify not just being miserly, but also their shirk. They would say in another verse, لَوْ شَاءَ الرَّحْمَنُ مَا عَبَدَنَاهُمْ. In Surah Az-Zukhruf, they would say, لَوْ شَاءَ الرَّحْمَنُ. Had Ar-Rahman willed, we wouldn't have worshipped these idols. Subhanallah. Allah decreed us to worship these idols. We have no say in the matter. Using qadr to excuse and justify their sins. This is something not exclusive to the Quraysh. It is a specious argument that came into the Muslim Ummah. And a group arose known as the Jabriya, who began to do exactly the same thing. Misunderstanding qadr, leading them to basically cancel out all of Allah's decrees, commandments rather, by saying that we drank the alcohol, Allah decreed it. Wal-'iyadhu billah. As if to say Allah is the one who made us. Jabriya. We were under compulsion. But we won't get into that now. We'll just look at the argument. Look how Abu Bakr deconstructed the argument. He said, yes, it is all to do with the decree of Allah, but in different ways. Number one, there is the ontological decree of Allah. Allah decrees all things. Nothing happens except that Allah has decreed it. That is true. What you said is true. But Allah also decreed that human beings have a free will, and that they exercise that free will to adhere to His commandments, which is the second type of His will. His second type of will is that He decreed that you adhere to His religion. Now what does His religion say about this particular case? The religion says you have been commanded to spend on the poor. So don't focus on one aspect of Allah's will. recognize that there are two aspects to His will. Allah said, for example, وَكُلَّ شَيْءٍ خَلَقَنَاهُ بِقَدْرٍ. Every single thing has been created by Allah's qadr. And Allah also said, قُلِ الْحَقُّ مِنْ رَبِّكُمْ in Surah Kahf. قُلِ الْحَقُّ مِنْ رَبِّكُمْ فَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيُؤْمِنْ وَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيَكْفُرْ. But Allah, after saying in one place that everything happens by His qadr, mentioned in other places that human beings also have a will. For example, here He said to the Prophet, say to them, the haqq is from your Lord. So whoever wills, meaning you will, if you will, yu'min, believe. And if you will, your own will, disbelieve. So both of those wills, okay, they come together. Allah mentioned both wills together as well when He said, وَمَا تَشَاءُونَ إِلَّا أَن يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ. That they don't will unless Allah has willed. So Allah wills that you can have a free will to do certain things within limits. Now, how do you exercise that free will? You're supposed to exercise it based on Allah's religion. If you do not, you will be held accountable. That is what Abu Bakr was telling him. You don't give, you will be held accountable because Allah decreed that you have a free will. Based on that free will, you will be taken and held to account. Does this mas'ala of qadr make sense? Yes? Clear? Okay. Now one linguistic point here. وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ أَنْفِقُوا. They were told to do infaq. But their response wasn't, we're not going to do infaq. What was their response? أَنُطْعِمُ. We're not going to feed. Infaq and it'am. Did you see that? They never responded by saying, we're not going to feed. You're telling us to feed, we're not going to spend. Their response was, we're not going to feed. This shows us their miserliness. How so? Spending is of many types. Spending money, spending freeing a slave, spending by giving food. I have some food, brother, you need some food, take some food. Giving someone food, okay, is a form of spending. It is just a portion of spending. In fact, it's one of the easiest things to do. You know, the other day I saw someone in Hackney on the main road. And this lady, she seemed like a well-to-do person, not like a tramp. She seemed like a well-to-do person. And she was going through to the dustbin on the main road. And when I saw her in the beginning, I thought to myself, maybe she's looking for, I don't know, something she lost, or maybe she wants to get some rubbish from there for recycling or something like this. But then I saw her rummage through and try and open up wrappers of food. And I saw that, I felt compelled to give something. This is the normal human reaction. Any sensible person would want to do something, to give some food. Yani someone's hungry, give them food. You have food, give them food. They're saying, we don't, forget about spending. We're not even going to do feeding. We don't even want to feed. Subhanallah. Look how Allah is telling us, look at the state of their miserliness. We're telling them to spend. They're saying, forget about spending, we're not even going to feed. You know? Okay. Was there anything else for this ayah? Ibn Āshūr mentioned something else as well. Ibn Āshūr said, when they said, أَنُطْعِمُ, is the hamza of istifham. Hamza of asking a question. But it's not just any question. It is the istifham inkari. It is the mockery type of question. It is the if you like, the abusive type of question. You know, when somebody asks you a question, they can ask sincerely, or they can ask by means of mockery. Is that what you really believe? Like Richard Dawkins, when he was debating Mahdi Hussein in the Oxford debates, I think many people have watched it. He said to him, you really believe that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam flew on a winged horse? Istifham inkari. It's not a real sincere question. It's a way of mockery. So Ibn Āshūr said, أَنُطْعِمُ, they were mocking those people who were commanding them to spend. Their denial first to spend, and also forget the spending, even feeding, and moreover mocking the very concept of being told and advised. All together, these three things show us the miserliness of those people. Now a question to you, brothers. Is being stingy and miserly a human trait, okay, that believers and non-believers have to struggle with in the same way or to the same level? Or is miserliness, stinginess connected to a lack of belief in the hereafter? Yani, do disbelievers suffer from miserliness more than believers? Did you get the question? What do you think? Yani, is it a trait of kufr or what? Even though miserliness is something that everyone, has a trait of different levels, when you totally divorce yourself of the hereafter, there's no such thing as a life to come, then all you're left with is the dunya, right? In the dunya, people are living, who live for the dunya, are living for themselves. They want to do things that make them happy, gratification. The happiness of other people is even linked to their own happiness, that they want to see a smile on the face of that orphan, and that becomes the motivation for wanting to give charity. But how much of a motivation could that possibly be? That is, fighting. That motivation is fighting with their own motivation to spend their money on new clothes, on a new car, on a new house. So when you divorce yourself of the hereafter, what you're left with really is a paradigm in which you are the focus. You are the individual and your needs are what comes first. Therefore, it makes sense to attribute miserliness as an intrinsic trait of disbelief. Wallahu a'lam. Wallahu a'lam. But to do the proper study, one needs to go through all the ayat through speaking about miserliness and see how Allah spoke about them. Whether it is true, it is linked intrinsically to disbelief, or whether it is something else. Wallahu a'lam. Okay. On a side note, recently in the Times there was an article about the different communities in the UK and how charitable different communities are in the UK. Who ranked number one? The Muslim community. The Muslim community in this survey ranked number one as being the most charitable community out of all of the communities in the UK. They averaged that each person gives sadaqah, charity, in the year from the Muslim community. How many pounds do you think a year? Roughly on average. This is, taking the whole cross section of the Muslim community and then dividing it, with the amount of charity given. How much do you think any average Muslim gives in a year? Come on, let's have some figures, man. 1,000. SubhanAllah, 1,000. I wish everyone was generous like you. SubhanAllah. 500, no, even 500. 500 pounds a year. Every Muslim on average is giving that. You said 100? 150. Okay. It is 371 pounds. On average, a Muslim living in the UK gives 371 pounds in charity, and that figure places the Muslim community at number one. Okay, number one. Okay, now I wanted to mention something here. That was the specious argument of the Quraysh at that time. Specious arguments, come and go, they just take different forms. In our times, there is one specious argument continually being propagated by our government about the Muslim community. Okay, and the argument goes like this. Muslim community has a problem with extremism. Violent extremism, is the precursor to terrorism, and it needs to be clamped down. We need to put in place measures to stop young people become radicalized and turning to extremism, and then going on to commit acts of terrorism. Now, what measures do they bring in force? Measures that relate to not those people who may be extreme in what they say and how they behave and are seen to be actually, doing things which are bordering terrorism or are terrorism. They are focusing on other individuals in the Muslim community who speak against extremism, speak against terrorism, and they are saying to the universities, for example, no platform policy. This sheikh, this Maulana, this person should not be given a platform in your university. Mosques are now being visited by Prevent and being told, why are you giving a platform to this speaker who is known for his so-called radical views? Hang on a minute. These people, what crime have they committed? They haven't committed any crime. So why are you targeting them? Why are you targeting them? Why are you trying to silence them? The specious argument. Non-violent extremism is a conveyor belt to violent extremism. Really? Wow. So you're saying that a law-abiding UK citizen going about his daily life who believes in the Islam, 1400-year-old religion, somehow will eventually, like a conveyor belt, if not stopped, end up becoming extreme, violent, and preaching radicalism, the type that leads others to commit acts of terrorism. Is that really true? What is your evidence that is a conveyor belt? There is no evidence. In fact, when we ask the experts, for example, the ex-CIA officer, Mark Seligman, ex-CIA, he's in the business of intelligence. He knows a thing or two about, intelligence, evidence-based decision making. He said, Mark Seligman, who also advised the New York Police Department and testified in front of the 9/11 Commission, described the conveyor belt theory as nonsense and says that there is little empirical evidence for such a conveyor belt process. He said, it is the same nonsense that led governments 100 years ago to claim that left-wing political protests led to violent anarchy. The other thing is, the way you are tackling this so-called extremism, focusing only on this one community, Muslims, suggests that the extremism and the terrorism that comes from this community far outweighs and eclipses the acts of terrorism by anyone from any other community. That's what it suggests to us. What do the figures show? Do the figures show that that is true, that these individuals from this community are wreaking havoc and committing acts of terrorism more than anyone else? Because if it does show that, we can see where you're coming from. According to Europol, Europe-wide poll, less than 6% of terrorist acts across the continent, year on year for the last 10 years, have been carried out by Muslims. 6%? 6% is leading you to come up with this task force, which now, after the killing of Lee Rigby, is looking to redefine Islam. Government now is speaking about Muslims, if they read the books of Sayyid Qutb, rahimahullah, that they are on this conveyor belt to becoming extremists. They are saying now that some 25 of our leaders, our teachers, who are law-abiding UK citizens, by the way, should be silenced, given ASBOs. You know what ASBO is? ASBOs are for those, those guys that wear hoodies on the streets, swear a lot, get drunk, make a mess. We want those ASBOs to be given to our leaders. 25 of them have been named. Specious argument. Non-violent extremism is a conveyor belt to extremism or violent extremism. It's a specious argument. It has no evidence whatsoever. And that is why we will continue to challenge it and to expose the government for having no meaning for the word extremism in the first place, and for using this argument to bring about many laws that curb the liberties of law-abiding UK citizens. For example, look what Snowden did. He exposed the Western world for spying not on criminals, not on people bordering criminality, people that are reading their emails sent by their managers. People are writing to their girlfriends and their wives that, how are you doing today? What do you think about dinner tonight? They are spying on those people. And what is the justification? Out there are those terrorists, don't you see what they're doing? Destroying our society and everything we believe in. Therefore we need to bring in these legislations. Specious argument. Anyway, let's move on. وَيَقُولُونَ مَتَى هَذَا الْوَعْدُ إِن كُنْتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. The Quraysh, first they responded with the specious argument. Then they went further to openly mock the Prophet ﷺ and the companions by saying, وَيَقُولُونَ مَتَى هَذَا الْوَعْدُ. When will this wa'd come to pass? Tabari said either this refers to the sa'ah, the last hour, or it refers to ba'ath, resurrection in general. They are saying, when will this resurrection that you keep on going on about really come? In kuntum sadiqeen, if you are really truthful, honest people who have dignity. Now, I want you to think about that for a second. The Quraysh chose to mock the believers of Makkah who were there, the community, the minority, about this one point. They chose to mock them about their propagation of Islam. But not just any propagation. The type of propagation that keeps on speaking about the hereafter. The hereafter. How many times in the Quran was this statement mentioned? Does anyone know? وَيَقُولُونَ مَتَى هَذَا الْوَعْدُ إِن كُنْتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. Take a guess. 50. Come on, man. 50 times. Which Quran have you been reading, man? Not 50, no.
5, 6,
7 times. Mentioned 7 times in the Quran. Surah Yunus, Surah Al-Anbiya, Surah Al-Naml. Here in Surah Al-Sajda. But in Sajda Allah said, وَيَقُولُونَ مَتَى هَذَا الْفَتْحُ إِن كُنْتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. Surah Yaseen, again here. And again Surah Al-Mulk as well. And I think there's another place that I missed out. There's 7 altogether. 7 times Allah chose to tell us that these people mock you about your Islam, but not just Islam in general. This one particular issue that they keep having about you talking about the Akhirah. The Akhirah. Why you keep talking about the Akhirah? If you're going to talk about Akhirah, when is this Akhirah coming? At-Tabari said, وَيَقُولُونَ مَتَى هَذَا الْوَعْدُ. Was Quraysh were actually asking the Prophet ﷺ, okay, you're talking about punishment, Akhirah, when is it coming? Bring it. Hasten it. Hasten it. Okay, now a lesson here. I want you to reflect over this. The Muslim community, a minority, living in Makkah 1400 years ago amongst non-Muslims. What was their da'wah like? What did they used to speak about? In their conversations with non-Muslims, friends, family, colleagues, how did they present Islam? What was their narrative? We can understand what their narrative was by looking at the response of those people. Their narrative focused mostly on how Islam will impact you in the Akhirah. Akhirah-centric da'wah. Their main narrative, what they would speak about most often, is about not this dunya, but about the Akhirah. By the way, there is something called the hereafter. And there are only 2 places human beings will go. Either they will go to paradise or they will go to hell. Paradise, a place of eternal bliss, wonderment. Anything you can imagine, it will be there and even beyond your imagination. People who reject Allah and His Prophet, they will go to the hellfire. Do you know about hellfire? Terrible place. People will be burnt in the hellfire. Agony. No one there to help you. No one there to intercede for you. Keep on going on about it. This is what was the focus of the da'wah of the Anbiya. All the prophets did da'wah like this. Now I'll ask you a question. Look at how da'wah has changed in our times. Da'wah in our times has shifted drastically, going further and further away from the way of the prophets. The prophets would come and they would say, اعبدوا الله ما لكم من دونه ما لكم إله غيري. There is no Lord other than Him. Worship Him. Worship Him. فاستغفروه. Ask forgiveness from Him. فَتُوبُوا إِلَيْهِ. Turn back to Him. All of this is talking about the akhirah. Save yourselves from the fire, Jahannam. The Prophet ﷺ would come to his people and he would say to the Quraysh, أَنذَرْتُكُمُ النَّارِ. I warn you about the fire. He would say لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ فَتُفْلِحُوا. You will be successful. Speaking about the hereafter. But look at our times now. Have a listen to the lectures now. When you go to the conferences, the lectures, the talks, not all of them, but many of them. If you listen carefully, what you can actually hear is someone telling you how Islam is good for your health and well-being. Good for your health and your well-being. I'll give you examples. With the rise of the far right and Islamophobia, Muslims now are coming together to speak about how do we tackle this? How do we turn back this? How do we change public opinion? One line of argument is that, look, people out there, generally they're good people, we have behaved poorly. We have not behaved well with others. The way we treat our colleagues, the way we go around conducting ourselves. Look how many Muslims are on the benefit. Look how many Muslims commit crimes. How much of a percentage Muslims make up in the prisons. We have done ourselves wrong. If we behave well, have good character with our people, they will change the way they think about us. We need to have good character. We need to change the way we behave. We need to be upright citizens. But there's a difference. There's a difference between someone who says you need to have good character so that the people will respect you, and the one who says you need to have good character because Allah commands it from you. There's a difference, isn't there? One is saying, have the character like the character of the Prophet ﷺ, so the people will respect you, love you, they will not abuse you. And the other one is saying, it is true, if we behave well, people will look at us differently. But why should we behave well? We should behave well because Allah commanded us to. Allah told us, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. In the conduct of the messenger, you have a beautiful example. Follow it. Allah commanded us to have good character. When people speak, for example, about Islamic finance, they say that had the states adopted the Islamic model of finance, they would not be suffering the recessions that they continue to suffer. People will not be devastated by the recession had they been working according to the Islamic financial model. Now, even though that is true, there is a big difference between someone who says avoid riba, stay away from riba because it causes a recession, and someone who says you better stay away from riba because if you don't, فَأْذَنُوا بِحَرْبٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. Because Allah said He and His Messenger have waged war on the one that does not give up riba. There's a difference between the two. When people, for example, speak about zakat, they say if zakat was implemented on the world stage, then global poverty would be wiped out or near enough reduced to a negligible level. Not like now, which it is norm. Even though that is true, there is a big difference between someone saying we need people to give zakat to wipe out poverty, and someone saying we need to give zakat because of one of our pillars of our religion. There's a difference between the two. The first narrative focuses on the dunya. What can Islam do for me in my world, in my life? How can Islam take care of me and my needs and the needs of my community? The other narrative is saying we need Islam to save us from the hellfire. We need Islam to enter into that paradise of Allah. We need Islam so Allah will help us. And by the way, when we do things for Allah's sake, then Allah Allah will give us benefits in the hereafter and in this dunya. There's a difference between the two. Big difference between the two. What was the way of the Anbiya? The way of the Anbiya was to focus on the Akhirah. And then once you have Allah as your goal, your motivation, the reason why you practice this religion, you will find many benefits come to you. Many worldly benefits come to you. Okay? So that is just one point we wanted to mention. And you see for yourself, brothers, am I making a big deal out of nothing, or is this really true? And when you hear some of the lectures nowadays, they speak about Islam. For example, someone is speaking about Salah, the benefits of Salah. Okay, we think maybe he's going to speak about the rewards person is going to get, what Allah is in store for the one who makes wudu properly. No, he's speaking about how Salah, with its bowing and its prostration, is so good for the vertebrates in the back. And even though that is true, ya akhi, this benefit compared to the benefit of the Akhirah is negligible. And you want people to become Muslims so they can adopt this form of exercise, wal-'iyadhu billah. And think about what you're saying. This is a worldly perspective on religion. We became Muslim to save ourselves from the fire. We want people to become Muslim to save themselves from the fire. Not so they can live happy lives and have, finance and have, social order. All of these things, we do want them, but we know that they only come about when you practice Allah's religion for His sake. Once you get rid of this motivation and you focus on the worldly, you become just worldly people, using your religion to benefit you in your life. This is very far from the way of the Prophet ﷺ and all of the Anbiya of the past. Okay. The next verse. The next verse, Allah said, مَا يَنْظُرُونَ إِلَّا صَيْحَةً وَاحِدَةً تَأْخُذُهُمْ وَهُمْ يَخِصِّمُونَ. Tabari said that what they're asking to be hastened in the previous words, وَيَقُولُونَ مَتَى هَذَا الْوَعْدِ, is what? What they are asking to be hastened is صَيْحَةً وَاحِدَةً. صَيْحَةً وَاحِدَةً here refers to the blowing of the trumpet of Israfil. Which blowing? There are two main views about the blowing of Āshūr, the trumpet of Israfil. The first view is that there are two blowings. This is based on the ayah in Surah Zumar, where Allah said, وَنُفِخَ فِي الصُّورِ فَصَعِقَ مَنْ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَنْ فِي الْأَرْضِ إِلَّا مَنْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ ثُمَّ نُفِخَ فِيهِ أُخْرَى. In this verse, in Surah Zumar, Allah first spoke about a blowing of the trumpet which would cause sa'iq. Sa'iq means to swoon, mean to fall unconscious. Then He said, ثُمَّ نُفِخَ فِيهِ أُخْرَى. Then another, meaning a second blowing of the trumpet will come. This is one view. The second view is that there are three blowing of the trumpets. The first, and this is the opinion it seems of Ibn Kathīr and Tabari, that there are three. The first is the blowing of the trumpet which will signal the coming of the last hour. When that happens, the people will then be gathered together. Ibn Kathīr said, for example, that when this sayhatan wahida happens, the heads of people will begin to tilt upwards, and they will look to the sky when they hear that sound to see where it is coming from. And then he said a great fire will encompass them and drive them to one plain, one particular area. Then, this is the other opinion, another blowing of the trumpet will happen. This blowing of the trumpet will make them fall unconscious. The third, and the second in the first view, is the blowing of the trumpet, nafkhatul ba'ath. The trumpet blows and resurrection begins. Life is given once again to those dead bodies. Okay? One very beautiful hadith reported by Abu Hurairah in the Mustadrak of Al-Hakim, class of Sahiba Shaykh Al-Bani rahimahullah. The Prophet ﷺ said that the one entrusted with blowing the trumpet is there, ready, waiting, looking towards the arsh of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, never looking away in case the command comes to blow it before he blinks his eye. And his two eyes are glaring like two shining stars. Allahu Akbar. Israfil, by ijma', is the angel entrusted with blowing of the trumpet. Now, Allah said, you know what they are asking to be brought forward? It is just sayha. But not just one, not just a blowing. One blowing. Illa sayhatan wahidatan. It is just one blowing. That's all it takes for me. One blowing, and all of those that are living on the earth will fall unconscious. تأخذهم, it will take them. This sound, this scream, this trumpet blowing, it will take them, overcome them. But look at this. You see, this will happen, and whoever is living at that time, believers and disbelievers, will all be taken and rendered unconscious. But Allah then said, وَهُمْ يَخِصِّمُونَ. As for the disbelievers, they will be in a particular state, wow of hal. What state? Hum yakhisimun. They are doing yakhisimun. What does that mean? Tabari said that either it means yatakallamun, they are speaking, or that they are arguing. Arguing about what? They are arguing about what the prophets used to tell them about the akhirah. Is it really true? It's a load of hocus pocus. And last hour, judgment day, hereafter, paradise, hellfire. This is all just rubbish, arguing amongst themselves. That is the state that they will be in when the trumpet is blown and they are destroyed, meaning they are rendered unconscious. Ibn Kathīr said in a more general way, وَهُمْ يَخِصِّمُونَ refers to them going about their everyday lives. Going about their everyday lives, bickering, quibbling, arguing, doing the mundane things. Qurtubi said, like they are in the marketplaces, just going around living their normal lives, meaning in a state of utter heedlessness about what is about to happen to them, and heedlessness about the akhirah. Totally aloof of the reality of the life to come. It is in that state that the sayha comes, that the blowing of the trumpet of Israfil comes, and they are taken away. Now, just one linguistic point. Yakhisimun is actually originally in Arabic goes to a verb yakhtasimun. If it, in simple Arabic, this verb would be said yakhtasimun, and it is mentioned as yakhtasimun many times in the Quran. But it took another form here. Yakhisimun, they said, is sighat al-mubalagha. It is the same verb of arguing, but in a more intense form, meaning that they were continually, persistently arguing, bickering with one another, utterly heedless of the life to come. Yakhisimun. This was a more intense form of the verb yakhtasimun. Okay, a few more verses now. Then Allah said, فَلَا يَسْتَطِيعُونَ تَوْصِيَةً وَلَا إِلَىٰ أَهْلِهِمْ يَرْجِعُونَ. Allah said, فَلَا يَسْتَطِيعُونَ تَوْصِيَةً, that they will not be able to do tawsiyah. Tawsiyah comes from the word wassa. Tawsiyah is the verbal noun referring to writing a will or leaving a bequest. Writing a will or leaving a bequest. So the end of time is coming. They're about to die. Any person who knows death is around the corner will want to do certain things. The most important thing he'll want to do is what? Write a will. Family, my sons, my children, I want to distribute my estate to my heirs. You take this, you take this. This is the most important thing he will want to do. If he found out he's dying tomorrow, he will want to do a few things. The most important of them is to divide his estate. Allah is saying, فَلَا يَسْتَطِيعُونَ تَوْصِيَةً. They will not have the time or the ability to even do this tawsiyah. Look how Allah didn't say وَلَا يُوصُونَ, that they don't write out their wills. Allah said لَا يَسْتَطِيعُونَ, that they don't have the istita'a, the ability to make out a will. There's a difference. See, someone could be told, you're terminally ill, you've got 6 months prognosis. In that 6 months, he has the ability to write his will, get his family together and say, look, this is where we're going to divide up my will. But he just doesn't get around to it, for one reason or another. But the one who doesn't have the ability to, for sure, he will never, even if he could, do that will. Yeah? In the first case, the man could have written a will, but he ended up not. If he never had the capability, then for sure he will never write out his will. Allah is negating, they don't even have the ability. Now this points to the speed at which they will be rendered unconscious. When the blowing of the trumpet comes, literally it will happen and they will fall down in a state of unconsciousness. No time in between to do anything. Now Allah said, فَلَا يَسْتَطِيعُونَ تَوْصِيَةً, and then moreover, وَلَا إِلَىٰ أَهْلِهِمْ يَرْجِعُونَ, and they will not be able to go back to their families. You see, I want you to imagine, there's a man, he's got a family, he goes out to work, maybe this is in America where they have earthquakes, and that day he feels, a tremor, and he doesn't know what's going on, but he senses maybe there's an earthquake happening. And then he sees, wow, things are getting bad. Things are beginning to fall down. Their building over there, it seems like it's about to collapse. It looks like maybe this is my final moment. What is the first thing he will want to do? Phone his family. So what he's going to say to his wife, look, it seems like there's an earthquake here. I don't know what's going to happen. All I wanted to say is that, I love you. I've always loved you. Tell the kids I love them. These few words, Allah is saying, وَلَا إِلَىٰ أَهْلِهِمْ يَرْجِعُونَ. Forget about making a will. They won't even have the ability to see their families once more. They won't have the ability to even give a parting, word of advice, word of affection, word of love. They won't have any of that whatsoever. Whoever imagines, his last moments, believer or disbeliever, he would want to imagine that his friends and family are there around him, sitting by his side. True? He'd want that this is my last moment, my family that I love so dearly, they are there, sitting there beside me. To take away even that opportunity, builds anguish in the heart of the person. I won't even have the ability to look at my family, to be with them one last moment. No! You people who rejected me and my Prophet ﷺ, you will be dealt with like this now. As-sayha will come. You will not have no ability to write out a will or even to look at your families one last time. Then Allah said, وَنُفِخَ فِي الصُّورِ فَإِذَا هُمْ مِنَ الْأَجْدَاثِ إِلَىٰ رَبِّهِمْ يَنْسِلُونَ. Now this wow, Ibn Āshūr said that this wow is of i'tiradiyya. What does that mean? It means that this wow is showing us a sequence of events, or is allowing us to follow these things as a sequence of events. That imagine, they were at one point arguing with the Prophet ﷺ, mocking him and his companions. Then they were asking for this adhab to be brought forward, and now look when it comes. When it came, they didn't have the ability to do this or this. Now, after they had been rendered unconscious and they are now in their graves, the next thing happens. What's the next thing? وَنُفِخَ فِي الصُّورِ, and then again the sur will be blown. فَإِذَا هُمْ, إِذَا here, the إِذَا here is of فُجَائِيَّة. Fujaiya means of suddenness. فَإِذَا, they were there in their graves. فَإِذَا هُمْ, all of a sudden what happens? مِنَ الْأَجْدَاثِ إِلَىٰ رَبِّهِمْ يَنْسِلُونَ, that they are now doing yansilun to their Rabb. Yansilun, as the Tabari mentioned, comes from nasalan. Nasalan means to walk at a swift speed, to walk at speed. Or, he said, it means yakhrujun, to be taken out. Yansilun, that they came out from where? Ajdath. In the Quran, graves have been referred to with 3 different words. Qabr, Ajdath, and what else? There's another word as well. It comes in the next verse. Marqad. Marqad. Allah said that you can't make those here man fil qubur, those in the qubur, in the graves. Here Allah said not qabr or qubur. He said ajdath. What is the difference? Both can be translated as they will be taken out of their graves and then walking at haste to their Lord. The difference is very subtle. They said ajdath comes from the word jadatha. Jadatha. The original verb they said was actually jadatha. The difference between a jadath and a qabr is as follows. They said jadath, either it refers to the sound of the hooves, the sound of the hooves, the sound of the horse as it trots. That sound, they said that ajdath has this connotation of this sound. Okay, so here Allah is speaking about resurrection, and they're coming out of their graves, and in particular He used for the word grave jadath. Perhaps the link is that Allah was bringing to the attention the sound that will be heard on that day when they are coming out of their graves. SubhanAllah. Ajdath. They will be coming out and you will hear the footsteps of those people coming forth and then being taken, marching. You know, you will hear those footsteps. Imagine, all of the people of mankind, how many billions and billions of people will be resurrected from their graves. Okay, there's another meaning of jadath as well. I want to find it. Okay, yeah. In Lisan al-Arab, a very big dictionary, old dictionary, they said jadath can also refer to graves without markings. Graves without markings. When I heard this, subhanAllah, I was amazed. Graves usually have, a headstone, or the big tombstone. But some people, they die out sea. Some people die in war. Their bodies are never found. They're somewhere there, buried. No markings. Ajdath refers to every single type of grave. The graves with markings and the graves without markings. Allah is saying, we know everyone out there. And we are going to resurrect every single one of them. Allahu Akbar. مِنَ الْأَجْدَاثِ إِلَىٰ رَبِّهِمْ يَنْسِلُونَ. When they are taken out, as if it wasn't enough that I resurrected all of them by my power, yansilun. Now they are going to come walking. Not just any type of walk. They are going to come in haste. يَخْرُجُونَ مِنَ الْأَجْدَاثِ سِرَاعًا. As Allah said in another verse, that they are going to come out in speed. Rāzī mentioned a nice point here. He said, yansilun isn't just any type of walking, because imagine all of those people. Some people, believers, they will want to come in haste to Allah Jalla wa Ala. Disbelievers, they will not want to go near there. They know what is coming. So people will walk at different paces. But he said, yansilun is a type of walk which is done under compulsion, done under force. They have no choice in the matter. They are being driven towards the plane of resurrection. Look at the word, subhanallah, yansilun. Now, after that, قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون. Those Quraysh disbelievers will say, woe to us. من بعثنا من مرقدنا. Man, who بعثنا, who has resurrected us من مرقدنا, from our graves. Again, graves being used, but another word is used. Marqad. What does marqad mean? Marqad comes from the word raqad. Raqada, which refers to sleep, resting, or bedding. Marqad is both the masdar and the ism makan. It is both a verbal noun as well as the place of this verb. Okay, what does that mean? It means that marqad is where people go to sleep, as well as the act of sleeping itself. So they were referring to marqad. Who took us out of our marqad? They said this because between the first blowing of the trumpet and the second blowing, which is the resurrection, there is some time there. That time everyone will be in a state of sleep. They will not know anything whatsoever. They will be put to sleep. Before this time, people are living in the graves. The believers enjoying their time and the disbelievers being punished. May Allah save us from that. Then when the trumpet is blown of faza', of terror, of unconsciousness, meaning the hour is established, then people will go to sleep. There are different narrations how long this sleep will last. Some, like Al-Hasan al-Basri, related 40 years. Others said 40 months. There is some ikhtilaf. Point is that they go to sleep. When they are awoken, now it makes sense. They referred to the graves as marqad. They were just sleeping. They were sleeping. When they awoke, they saw all of this resurrection. People coming back to life. Jahannam, Jannah, Malaika, all of this. Shock. Al-Qurtubi said, how come they are surprised? When those people who were just being punished in the grave before, how comes they are saying, Man ba'athana, who resurrected us? When they know that Allah is the one who punished them in the graves. Did you get the question? What do you think, is the answer to this question? What do you think? They were surprised, Man ba'athana, but they were already being punished in the grave, so they knew that Allah is the one. Allah is truthful. Allah is the truth. His Prophet, what he said was truthful. Jahannam is truthful. They know, because the veils of the unseen have been taken away. Moreover, they are being punished as well in the grave. So then why are they surprised? The two answers that I came across were given by Qurtubi. He said, the reply is that they are wondering, who is it that habbana, took us out of the marqad? So he said that they're not surprised at resurrection per se. They're surprised at who is the one who took them out of the grave. Do you get it? Yeah, based on this, he said the verse can be split in two ways. Usually, if you look at the mushaf, you see قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا. Woe to us, who took us out of the grave. According to this understanding, what Qurtubi mentioned, which is also another qira'ah of Ibn Mas'ud, he would say قالوا يا ويلنا من أهبنا, who awoke us من مرقدنا هذا. They would stop here. من مرقدنا هذا. Stop. Start ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون. So what they are saying, what Qurtubi is saying, is that when they taken out of their grave, they say, who took us out of this grave? هذا. من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا. Stop. ما وعد الرحمن. That the resurrection, your resurrection, is being done by Ar-Rahman. Is being done by Ar-Rahman, and what the prophets used to say was true. Who says this statement? The disbelievers say this statement, that they then realize what Allah said was true and what His Messenger said was true. If you go for the other opinion, the other way of splitting the ayah, the meaning is that they say who resurrected us, and they are surprised about the resurrection, and then the believers say هذا ما وعد الرحمن. You're surprised? Ar-Rahman is the one who resurrected you, and what our prophets used to say to you was true. Did you get the two recitations here? One stops at one place, one stops at another. Okay, we'll move. There's a few points, but we'll move to the next. We'll move to the next verse, inshallah. إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون. Allah then says that this resurrection resurrecting every single human being out there, from wherever they may be, died drowning in the sea, died at war in an unmarked grave, all those graves out there, every single one of them, bringing them to life. And then before me, إِلَّا صَيْحَةً وَاحِدَةً, again صَيْحَةً وَاحِدَةً. Here it refers to not another blowing of the trumpet, according to one opinion. It refers to the speed at which Allah does all of this. The time it takes for one blowing of a trumpet, a moment, literally a moment. That is the time it takes me, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to do all of this. إِلَّا صَيْحَةً وَاحِدَةً. When they are resurrected and brought together, فَإِذَا هُمْ جَمِيعٌ لَدَيْنَا مُحْضَرُونَ, then they will all together, لَدَيْنَا, before me, مُحْضَرُونَ. Muhdarun means that they will have to now be given account, taken to account, rewarded for the good that they did if they were believers, and punished if they were disbelievers or disobedient believers. Ladayna. Ladayna was used here and not indana. Indana can also mean with us. Ladayna also means with us. What is the difference? The difference is between ownership and possession. Had Allah said, فَإِذَا هُمْ جَمِيعٌ عِنْدَنَا مُحْضَرُونَ, it would have meant, it would have had the meaning that, look, we own all of them and they are now here, and now we are going to take them to account. Ladayna has this sense of not just ownership, I own such and such, but I'm possessing it here and now as well. It is with me. Yani a king can possess, can own many things out there, many castles, but are they with him? Maybe he doesn't know there's somebody else enjoying his castle over there. He doesn't know about. No, ladayna, all of them are owned by me, and now they are here before me. For what? Muhdarun, to be taken to account. Look how Allah is expressing His qudra, His power, His might, by not only being able to resurrect them, but by doing it in ease. إِلَّا صَيْحَةً وَاحِدَةً. It is just a matter of blowing a trumpet and all of this is happening. My power, and also the ease through which I do all of this, and also His ownership of all His creation. Okay, now the last verse. فَالْيَوْمَ لَا تُظْلَمُ نَفْسٌ شَيْئًا وَلَا تُجْزَوْنَ إِلَّا مَا كُنْتُمْ تَعْمَلُونَ. Now they are here before me, you Quraysh, you are thinking about what is going to happen to you. Whether you will be dealt with unjustly. No. This day, فَالْيَوْمَ لَا تُظْلَمُ نَفْسٌ شَيْئًا. No soul will be dealt with unjustly. Look how Allah said, لَا تُظْلَمُ نَفْسٌ. That would have been enough. No soul will be dealt with unjustly. Allah said, لَا تُظْلَمُ نَفْسٌ شَيْئًا. Shay'a can have two meanings here. Either it can mean that nothing from wrong will be done to you, or it can mean that no wrong thing from all of these wrong things will be done to you. Nothing, no wrong whatsoever. Yani no wrong in a material sense. For example, a person did a certain deed, yet he will not be given the reward for it. This is a shortcoming. No, this will not happen. Psychologically, the person went through so much. No one knows the troubles I go through in my life, the hurt and the pain other people have caused me. Psychological pain, psychological jihad that you did, suffering, that Allah knows you will not be wronged about that. That will be taken into account. Material things will be taken into account. Every single thing will be taken to account, and you will not be wronged whatsoever. The other sense of wronging is not just from a personal level, that you did this and you never got this, but in a relative sense as well. This is really the perfection of justice, to deal with everyone all together in a just way. There's discrimination, and there's something called positive discrimination. Somebody out there is given a prize for something, given a reward. Yeah, he did something, fair enough. maybe he didn't do anything. If he didn't do anything and he was given something, it wouldn't be discrimination against him, it would be discrimination against other people. And how comes he got something, he didn't do anything? Why did he get it and I didn't get it? Favoritism. No. Imagine, all of mankind, and Allah will not wrong any one of them relative to anyone else. SubhanAllah. Any unimaginable justice. That's why Ibn Āshūr said, فَالْيَوْمِ لَا تُظْلَمُ نَفْسٍ. Allah is saying this is the day, يَوْمُ الْعَدْلِ, the day of justice. The day of justice. When a believer hears that, his heart feels joy. Alhamdulillah, all the problems I went through in my life, no one knew about them, Allah knew about them. Allah will reward me today. What I went through, Allah knew about. Today, لا تظلم نفس. I will be rewarded, Allah reward me. The wrongdoer, he will fear. Man, I thought I got away with those things. I thought no one knew about those things. That shirk that I did with Allah Jalla wa ala wal iyadhu billah, when I defrauded that person over there, when I took that money from that person, when I abused another brother, when I swore at him, when I backbited, those people never knew about it. فَالْيَوْمَ لَا تُظْلَمُ نَفْسٍ. No. Justice will be done today. All of those things will be brought before your very eyes. So the fact that Allah negated injustice, it points towards His justice in the perfect sense. Allah doesn't do any injustice means Allah is the most just. Justice in its perfect sense. No injustice will be done. وَلَا تُجَزَوْنَ. And they will not be given, recompensed. إِلَّا مَا كُنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. Except but on what they did. Tabari said, they will not be taken to task for what other people did. Another person done something and you got caught up in there. You wasn't really to blame. You really never had, a hand in that. Maybe you were there at that time, but really and truly I wasn't part of that crime. Allah is saying you will be dealt with إِلَّا مَا كُنْتُمْ تَعْمَلُونَ. Only what you did, your intention, what you did, I will hold you to account with complete justice. Allahu Akbar. May Allah Jalla wa Ala raise us up with the prophets, raise us up with the salihin. May Allah raise us up with the shuhada and grant us forgiveness and a reward in His paradise. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك وجزاكم الله خيرا.